The melody lingers, but the lanai is finally empty. Tonight we face the heartbreaking reality that all four Golden Girls have left us. We peel back the laughter to honor the quiet tragedies and final battles of the legends who taught us how to say goodbye. Betty White, as Rose Nylund. Long before she became the sweet, dim-witted heart of the show, Betty Marion White was a pioneer of the medium itself. Born on January 17, 1922, in the bustling suburbs of Chicago before moving to Los Angeles, she grew up during the Great Depression with a spirit that refused to be dampened. She was a woman of immense tenacity who began her career in radio when television was merely an experiment. By the time she was cast as Rose, she was already a seasoned veteran of the industry. It was 1985, and she was 63 years old, bringing with her a lifetime of comedic timing that she had sharpened over decades on game shows and sitcoms like The Mary Tyler Moore Show. As Rose Nylund, Betty White offered a masterclass in the comedy of innocence. She wasn't just playing dumb. She was playing a character with a pure heart and a literal mind in a cynical world. Her monologue stories about life in St. Olaf became the stuff of legend, often causing her co-stars to break character in genuine laughter. She was the glue that held the group together, providing a softness that balanced the sharp tongues of her roommates. America didn't just laugh at Rose. They felt protective of her, seeing in her the grandmother or aunt whose kindness was her greatest superpower. Yet behind that bright-eyed smile lay a deep well of personal grief. Betty was a romantic who found the love of her life later than most in television host Alan Ludden. They were the industry's golden couple until tragedy struck. Ludden passed away from cancer in 1981, just 4 years before the Golden Girls premiered. Betty carried that loss with her every day on set. When Rose grieved for her fictional husband Charlie, the tears in Betty's eyes were often drawn from her own very real heartbreak. She never remarried famously, stating that once you've had the best who needs the rest, she channeled her love into animal activism, becoming a tireless advocate for those who had no voice. Following the end of the show, Betty defied every expectation of aging in Hollywood. Instead of fading into retirement, she became a pop culture phenomenon all over again. In 2010, at the age of 88, a grassroots Facebook campaign swept the internet, resulting in her hosting Saturday Night Live to critical acclaim. She starred in Hot in Cleveland and became the cool, rebellious grandma to a generation of millennials. She worked tirelessly, fueled by vodka and hot dogs, proving that relevance has no expiration date. Betty White was the last surviving member of the core quartet holding the torch for her fallen friends. She remained sharp and beloved until the very end. She passed away peacefully in her sleep on December 31, 2021, just weeks shy of her milestone birthday. She was 99 years old at the time of her death. Today, she is remembered not just as a television star, but as a national treasure who taught us that kindness is timeless and that laughter is the only way to survive the grief of life. B. Arthur as Dorothy Zbornak. The woman who would command the screen as Dorothy Zbornak came from a background of surprising grit. Born on May 13, 1922 in Brooklyn, New York, Bernice Frankel was an imposing figure even in her youth. Before she ever stepped onto a stage, she served her country during World War II as a truck driver and typist in the United States Marine Corps Women's Reserve. She was tough, disciplined, and undeniably unique. She was 63 years old when she took on the role of the substitute teacher from Brooklyn, stepping into the shoes of a character that mirrored her own acerbic wit and imposing physical presence. B. Arthur redefined what a leading lady could look and sound like. As Dorothy, she was the anchor of rationality in a sea of chaos. Her deadpan delivery and her ability to convey volumes with a simple look at the camera became iconic. She represented the modern older woman, divorced, working, dating, and refusing to suffer fools. Her chemistry with her on-screen mother was electric, but it was her vulnerability, the moments where Dorothy felt unattractive or unloved, that made her performance transcendent. She showed that a woman could be strong and formidable while still yearning for tenderness. Off-screen B was a complex paradox. The woman who played the most confident character on TV was intensely private and famously introverted. She struggled with the superficial nature of Hollywood and often felt uncomfortable in the spotlight. Her hidden truth was a life marked by significant emotional hurdles, including 2 failed marriages and the immense pressure of being a tall woman in an industry obsessed with petite ingenues. She was a heavy smoker for much of her life, a habit that eventually took a toll on her health. Furthermore, the friction reported between her and Betty White on set stemmed from B's serious approach to acting, clashing with Betty's constant cheerfulness, a tension she had to manage daily. After the show wrapped, B. Arthur largely retreated from the public eye, turning down the spin-off series to seek a quieter existence. She returned to her first love, the stage, appearing in a one-woman show that toured the country. She became a fierce advocate for the LGBTQ+ community, bequeathing a significant portion of her estate to support homeless LGBTQ+ youth, a cause she championed long before it was mainstream. She lived her final years on her own terms in the sanctuary of her Los Angeles home, surrounded by her dogs and her cherished privacy. B. Arthur's final battle was a private one against lung cancer. She died on April 25, 2009, at the age of 86. Her legacy is one of uncompromising strength. She paved the way for female comedians who didn't fit the mold, proving that you didn't have to be sweet to be loved. In 2025, her sarcasm remains the gold standard for sitcom humor, and her performance as Dorothy Zbornak stands as a monument to the power of the intelligent woman. Rue McClanahan as Blanche Devereaux. Eddie Rue McClanahan was a daughter of the Dusty Plains, born on February 21, 1934, in Healton, Oklahoma. Unlike her co-stars, she was significantly younger when the phenomenon began. She was just 51 years old when she slipped into the silk robes of Blanche Devereaux. She had spent years working in the theater and on soap operas, perfecting a Southern accent and a flirtatious persona that would eventually define her career. She arrived at the role with a vivacity and a hunger for life that perfectly matched the character she would make immortal. Rue McClanahan's portrayal of Blanche was revolutionary. Before her, older women on television were largely depicted as asexual matriarchs. Blanche shattered that stereotype with a shimmy and a smile. She was unapologetically vain, sexual, and confident. Rue brought a humanity to Blanche that prevented her from becoming a caricature. Beneath the vanity was a woman terrified of aging and being alone. She won an Emmy for her ability to make audiences root for a character who was arguably the most self-absorbed of the group, turning vanity into a lovable quirk. The line between Rue and Blanche was often blurred in the tabloids, particularly regarding her romantic life. Her hidden truth was a tumultuous journey through 6 marriages, a frantic search for the stability she rarely found. While Blanche's escapades were played for laughs, Rue's real-life heartbreaks were painful and public. Beyond the romance, she faced severe physical trials. She battled breast cancer in 1997 with fierce determination, and later in life, her health began to fail her in cruel ways, including a minor stroke in 2009 that forced her to undergo bypass surgery and confront her own mortality. Following the cancellation of The Golden Girls and the short-lived The Golden Palace, Rue refused to slow down. She penned a candid autobiography that laid bare her life's mistakes and triumphs. She took to the stage in Wicked on Broadway, proving she still had the stamina for live theater. However, the years eventually caught up with the vivacious star. Her final years were marked by a quiet struggle against declining health, a sharp contrast to the energetic woman who had danced across the lanai in Miami. Rue McClanahan left this world on June 3, 2010. She suffered a brain hemorrhage and passed away at the age of 76. Her death marked the beginning of the end for the era of the girls, as she was the second of the quartet to fall. Today, she is celebrated as a pioneer of sex positivity for older women. She taught us that beauty is a state of mind, and that life is meant to be devoured right up until the very last bite of cheesecake. Estelle Getty as Sophia Petrillo. The journey of Estelle Getty is perhaps the most miraculous of the entire cast. Born on July 25, 1923 in New York to Polish-Jewish immigrants, she spent decades toiling in the obscurity of the Yiddish theater circuit and community stages. She was a working mother who never gave up on her dream despite years of rejection. She was 62 years old when she was cast as the octogenarian Sophia, a role that required her to age up significantly. In reality, she was a year younger than B. Arthur, who played her daughter, a testament to her incredible acting ability and the transformative power of makeup. Sophia Petrillo was the show's secret weapon. Estelle Getty played the stroke survivor matriarch with zero filter, delivering one-liners that devastated her targets with surgical precision. She was the voice of unvarnished truth. We loved her because she said exactly what we were all thinking, but were too polite to utter. Her Picture It Sicily stories became a cultural touchstone. Despite the heavy makeup and the old lady shuffle she adopted for the role, Estelle radiated an energy that stole every scene she was in. While Sophia was fearless, Estelle was plagued by a hidden truth that was heartbreakingly ironic. She suffered from crippling stage fright. Every week, beneath the confident exterior of Sophia, Estelle was terrified she would forget her lines or fail her castmates. She often froze during taping, requiring cue cards and immense support. Later in life, the memory issues she feared became a cruel reality. She was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, a degenerative disease that slowly robbed her of the sharp mind that had delighted millions. After the lights of the sitcom dimmed, Estelle's battle with her health forced her into a premature retirement. The woman who had played the oldest character was the first to succumb to the ravages of age-related illness. She retreated from the public eye, cared for by her loving family. It was a long, slow goodbye for a woman who had burst onto the scene so late in life. Her struggles with dementia meant she could not fully participate in the reunions or enjoy the show's enduring legacy in her final years. Estelle Getty died on July 22, 2008, just 3 days before what would have been her 85th birthday. She was the first of the Golden Girls to pass away, a loss that was deeply felt by her co-stars and fans alike. Her legacy is one of perseverance. She proved that success has no deadline and that the smallest person in the room can often cast the largest shadow. Herb Edelman as Stanley Stan Zbornak. Herbert Edelman was a quintessential New York character actor, a man with a face everyone recognized but few could name. Born on November 5, 1933 in Brooklyn, he originally studied to be a veterinarian before the pull of the stage proved too strong. He served in the U.S. Army, a discipline that contrasted with the often chaotic characters he played. He was 52 years old when he first appeared at Dorothy's door, bringing a pathetic charm to the role of the ex-husband that was originally intended to be a one-off appearance. As Stan Zbornak, Herb Edelman accomplished the impossible. He made a cheating, mooching ex-husband lovable. His catchphrase, "Hi, it's me, Stan," delivered to a door slammed in his face, became a running gag that never grew old. We loved him because he was the perennial loser who never stopped trying. His chemistry with B. Arthur was palpable. They played off each other with the rhythm of an old married couple, blending resentment with a lingering, unspoken affection that gave the show some of its most poignant moments. Behind the goofy grin and the bad toupee, Herb Edelman was a man of depth and private struggle. His hidden truth involved a battle with pulmonary emphysema, a condition that made breathing difficult and eventually curtailed his energy. He had also navigated the rocky waters of divorce in real life, having been married to actress Louise Sorel in the 1960s. He channeled the loneliness of the divorced man into Stan, giving the character a sadness that resonated with anyone who had ever lost love. Herb remained a working actor until the very end. He didn't chase stardom. He chased the work, appearing in dozens of television shows and films, always reliable, always funny. He never allowed his illness to define him publicly, continuing to perform even as his health declined. He was a favorite guest on the show right up until the final seasons, his presence always signaling a chaotic week for the Zbornak household. Herb Edelman passed away on July 21, 1996 in Woodland Hills, California. He was only 62 years old when pulmonary emphysema claimed his life. He was one of the first major recurring figures from the show to leave us. Today, he is remembered as the essential fifth element of the show, the man who gave Dorothy her fire and the audience a reason to cheer for the underdog, even if that underdog was a Utes named Stan. Leslie Nielsen as Lucas Hollingsworth. By the time he arrived on the set of The Golden Girls, Leslie Nielsen was already a comedy legend. Born on February 11, 1926, in the cold expanse of Saskatchewan, Canada, he spent the first half of his career as a serious dramatic actor. It wasn't until his hair turned silver that he reinvented himself as the deadpan king of spoof cinema. He was 59 years old when the show premiered, but he joined the cast only for the series finale, bringing a lifetime of charisma to the role of Blanche's uncle. Leslie Nielsen had the difficult task of ending the series. As Lucas Hollingsworth, he had to make the audience believe that the fiercely independent Dorothy Zbornak could fall in love and leave her friends in the span of 2 episodes. He succeeded brilliantly. He matched B. Arthur's wit beat for beat, replacing his usual slapstick with a charming, grounded warmth. We loved him because he finally saw Dorothy for who she truly was, beautiful, intelligent, and worthy of adoration. Behind the laughter and the whoopee cushions he famously carried, Leslie lived with a hidden truth that many actors fear: profound hearing loss. He wore hearing aids for much of his later life, a struggle he managed with dignity and humor. His romantic life was also complicated, involving 4 divorces before he found lasting stability. He knew the pain of separation, which perhaps allowed him to play the role of a man ready for late-in-life commitment with such sincerity. After sweeping Dorothy off her feet, Leslie Nielsen continued to work tirelessly. He remained a box office draw well into his 70s and 80s, primarily in the Naked Gun franchise and other parodies. He never lost his boyish love for a practical joke, often pranking interviewers and co-stars. He lived his final years in Florida, not far from the fictional setting of the show that gave him one of his most romantic roles. Leslie Nielsen died on November 28, 2010, due to complications from pneumonia. He was 84 years old. His death came the same year as Rue McClanahan's, marking a dark year for the show's extended family. He is remembered not just as a clown, but as a dashing leading man who gave one of television's most beloved characters the happy ending she deserved. Nancy Walker as Angela Grisanti, Vecchio. Nancy Walker was a force of nature wrapped in a small package. Born on May 10, 1922 in Philadelphia, she was the daughter of vaudevillians and spent her childhood in trunks and dressing rooms. She was a Broadway veteran and a television staple long before 1985. She was 63 years old, the exact same age as B. Arthur and Betty White when she appeared as Sophia's sister Angela. Known to millions as the waitress in the Bounty paper towel commercials, she brought a familiar, comforting face to the chaotic world of the Petrillo family. As Angela, Nancy Walker was a mirror image of Sophia, but perhaps even more stubborn. Her screen impact was immediate. She brought a dynamic energy that challenged the established hierarchy of the house. We loved her because she was the only person who could go toe-to-toe with Estelle Getty. Their bickering over decades-old grudges in Sicily provided some of the show's funniest and most culturally specific moments, highlighting the complex, often messy love between sisters. Nancy's life was defined by hard work and a struggle to be taken seriously beyond her comedic chops. Her hidden truth was a quiet battle with lung cancer, a disease that struck her down while she was still professionally active. She also bore the emotional weight of being a child of show business, a life that often prioritizes the audience over the family. Despite her small stature, she carried the burdens of her illness with immense privacy and fortitude. Nancy Walker's time after the show was tragically short. She remained a working actress and director until her body could no longer sustain the pace. She did not have a long, twilight period to reflect on her legacy. She worked, she fought, and she passed. Her final years were spent with her husband, David Craig, to whom she was devoted for over 40 years, a rarity in Hollywood. Nancy Walker died on March 25, 1992, in Studio City, California. She was 69 years old. She passed away just months before The Golden Girls aired its final episode. Though her time on the show was limited to guest spots, her impact was outsized. She remains a beloved figure of classic TV, a reminder that talent isn't measured in inches, but in presence. Harold Gould as Miles Weber. Harold Gould was the epitome of the gentleman actor. Born on December 10, 1923 in Schenectady, New York, he possessed an academic air that was no act. He had been a drama professor before turning to acting full-time. A veteran of World War II, he brought a grounded, mature presence to his roles. He was 62 years old when the show premiered initially, playing a different character in Season 1 before returning as Miles, the man who would capture Rose Nylund's heart. Miles Weber was the steady hand Rose needed after years of grieving her husband. Harold Gould played him with a patience and kindness that made him the ideal partner for Betty White's character. But the writers gave him a twist. He was also a former mob accountant in witness protection. We loved him because he navigated these absurd plot lines with a straight face and a warm smile. He represented the hope that a good, decent man was out there, even if he did come with a little baggage. Harold's life was remarkably stable compared to his peers, but he was not immune to the hidden truth of aging. He battled prostate cancer in his later years, a private struggle for a dignified man. He also carried the memories of his service in World War II, a generation's collective trauma that often went unspoken. Unlike the dramatic turbulence of Hollywood marriages, he remained married to the same woman, Leah, for 60 years, a steadfastness that mirrored his on-screen persona. After the Golden Girls, Harold Gould continued to be one of the busiest character actors in the business. He appeared in movies like Freaky Friday and Patch Adams, bridging the gap between generations. He never really retired. He simply kept working, bringing his professorial charm to every role until his health began to fail. He lived a quiet, respectable life in Los Angeles, respected by everyone who shared a scene with him. Harold Gould died on September 11, 2010, from prostate cancer. He was 86 years old. He passed away in the same sorrowful year as Rue McClanahan and Leslie Nielsen, closing the chapter on the show's male leads. He is remembered as the quintessential gentleman of the sitcom world, the man who taught us that intelligence is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Burt Reynolds as himself. Burt Reynolds was the definition of a movie star. Born on February 11, 1936, in Lansing, Michigan, he rose from stuntman to the biggest box office draw in the world. By 1985, however, his career was in a strange transition. He was 49 years old, still possessing the rugged good looks of Smokey and the Bandit, but facing an industry that was starting to look for the next big thing. His cameo on the show was a meta moment, a superstar acknowledging his own status among the ladies who adored him. Appearing as himself, Burt Reynolds provided one of the series' most electric moments. When he walked into the lobby of the hotel where the ladies were staying, the audience screamed as loud as the characters. He was charming, self-effacing, and incredibly gracious, allowing the women to fawn over him without making a mockery of their attraction. He represented the fantasy, the unreachable star who turns out to be a nice guy. His scene with Sophia, where she casually introduces herself, remains a highlight of the series. Beneath the mustache and the swagger, Burt was a man in immense pain. His hidden truth was a severe jaw injury that led to an addiction to painkillers and drastic weight loss, fueling cruel rumors that he had AIDS. He also faced financial ruin, eventually filing for bankruptcy despite his millions in earnings. His romantic life was a public battlefield, particularly his divorce from Lonnie Anderson. The man who seemed to have it all was often struggling just to keep his physical and financial life from collapsing. Burt's later years were a roller coaster of comebacks and health scares. He found critical redemption in the film Boogie Nights, reminding the world of his genuine acting talent. However, the physical toll of his stunt work left him frail, often requiring a cane or wheelchair. He continued to work driven by a need to pay debts and a love for the craft, eventually finding peace in his status as an elder statesman of Hollywood. Burt Reynolds died on September 6, 2018, from cardiac arrest. He was 82 years old. He passed away just before he was set to film scenes for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He leaves behind a legacy of swagger and vulnerability, a man who was the ultimate male sex symbol for the Golden Girls generation and beyond. Bob Hope as himself. Leslie Town's Bob Hope was an institution long before television existed. Born on May 29, 1903, in London, England, he was the voice of the American spirit during global conflicts. When the Golden Girls premiered in 1985, Bob Hope was already 82 years old. He was not just a guest star, he was a living artifact of entertainment history. His appearance on the show was a nod to the generation the show represented, a comfortable, familiar face that signaled old Hollywood. In his cameo, Bob Hope played himself, but a version that played into his reputation as a ladies' man. He shared a dance and a joke, bringing a vaudevillian energy to the set. For the characters of Dorothy and Rose, meeting Bob Hope was like meeting the president. For the audience, it was a passing of the torch, a moment where the comedy of the 1940s shook hands with the comedy of the 1980s. He didn't have to do much. His mere presence was the punchline and the payoff. While he was known for his rapid-fire delivery, the hidden truth of Bob Hope's final decades was the slow erosion of his faculties. He suffered from failing eyesight that left him practically blind in his later years and significant hearing loss. Despite this, he refused to stop entertaining, often relying on his wife Dolores to guide him. He also faced criticism in later years for staying on stage too long, a painful reality for a man whose entire identity was built on the laughter of strangers. Bob Hope's life after his guest appearance was a slow march toward a century. He retired from public life only when his body gave him no other choice. He spent his final years in the quiet luxury of his Toluca Lake estate, surrounded by the memorabilia of a life spent making the world laugh. He became a symbol of longevity, receiving honorary veteran status for his service to the troops. Bob Hope achieved the rare feat of living to see his 100th birthday. He died on July 27, 2003 at the age of 100. His death marked the end of the vaudeville era. He remains a titan of industry, a man who proved that humor is the one resource that can sustain a human being for an entire century. Debbie Reynolds as Trisha. Debbie Reynolds was Hollywood royalty, a woman who had been a star since she was a teenager in Singin' in the Rain. Born on April 1, 1932, in El Paso, Texas, she was the quintessential girl next door who grew up. She was 53 years old in 1985, navigating a career that had shifted from silver screen musicals to television guest spots. She was cast as Blanche's cousin, a role that allowed her to tap into her manic, high-energy comedic style. As Trisha, Debbie Reynolds was a mirror to Blanche, equally vain, but far more neurotic. She played a woman desperate to land a man willing to lie and manipulate in a way that was hilarious to watch. We loved her because she threw herself into the physical comedy, proving that she hadn't lost a step since her dancing days. Her presence on the show was a treat for movie lovers, seeing a legend play in the sandbox with the new queens of comedy. Debbie's life was a series of public humiliations and private resilience. Her hidden truth was the pain of betrayal. Her husband, Eddie Fisher, famously left her for Elizabeth Taylor, and later husbands gambled away the fortune she worked so hard to build. She faced financial ruin multiple times, forced to auction off her beloved collection of Hollywood memorabilia just to survive. Yet she never let the public see her sweat. She masked the heartbreak with a bright smile and a tap routine. Debbie Reynolds never stopped working. She became a Las Vegas staple, performed on Broadway, and introduced herself to a new generation as the grandmother in Halloween Town. Her bond with her daughter, Carrie Fisher, became the central relationship of her life, a complex, loving, and sometimes difficult tangle of two strong personalities. She remained a tireless advocate for mental health, influenced by her daughter's struggles. The end of Debbie's story is Shakespearean in its tragedy. One day after her daughter Carrie Fisher died, Debbie Reynolds suffered a stroke and passed away on December 28, 2016. She was 84 years old. Her last words were that she wanted to be with Carrie. It was a heartbreaking finale for a woman who had survived everything else. She leaves behind a legacy of endurance talent and a mother's love that was quite literally fatal. Bill Dana, as Angelo Grisanti. Bill Dana was a man of many faces. Born on October 5, 1924, in Quincy, Massachusetts, he was actually of Hungarian Jewish descent, though the world knew him best for his Latino character, Jose Jimenez. He was a brilliant writer and comedian who had worked behind the scenes as much as in front of them. He was 61 years old when the show began stepping into the role of Sophia's brother Angelo, a character that required him to adopt a thick Italian persona that masked his true heritage. As Uncle Angelo, Bill Dana was the catalyst for chaos. He often arrived destitute, claiming poverty to sponge off his sister and nieces. We loved him because he and Estelle Getty felt like real siblings bickering, lying to each other, but ultimately sharing a deep bond of loyalty. He brought a touch of the old world to the show, reminding the audience of the immigrant roots that grounded the Petrillo family story. His comedic timing was understated, allowing the women to shine while he set up the jokes. Bill Dana's hidden truth was the struggle of identity in Hollywood. He achieved massive fame as Jose Jimenez, a character that eventually became controversial for its stereotyping. He voluntarily retired the character when he realized it was offensive to the Hispanic community, a move of integrity that cost him work. He spent much of his career reinventing himself, writing for others, and finding ways to be funny without relying on the crutch that had made him famous. Bill Dana lived a long, full life after his time on the Golden Girls. He continued to write and act, but he largely stepped away from the frenetic pace of Hollywood. He became a mentor to younger comedians and a historian of the craft. He didn't chase the spotlight in his later years. He seemed content with the legacy he had built and the friends he had made along the way. Bill Dana was one of the last survivors of the show's extended cast. He died on June 15, 2017 in Nashville, Tennessee. He was 92 years old. His passing went unnoticed by some, but for fans of the show, it was the loss of a beloved family member. He is remembered as a comic genius who knew when to speak, when to listen, and most importantly, when to change. The sun has set over Miami and the cheesecake is finished. Standing here in late 2025, the silence is profound. We mourn the unspeakable loss of Betty B. Rue and Estelle, the grandmothers we all wished we had. But take comfort in the beautiful truth. The pain of separation is over. They are all together again, laughing with Bob Hope and Burt Reynolds in the stars. Good night, ladies. You will always stay golden.